The first episode of Andor Season 1 is titled Casa. The episode begins with Cassie and Andor walking through the rainy, dimly lit streets of Morlana 1, a corporate-controlled planet, in the year 5 before the Battle of Yavin. Cassian, wearing a hood, makes his way through the wet alleyways to a brothel, visiting for the first time. Inside the crowded brothel, he begins asking around for information about a Kenari woman, his sister, who used to work there but disappeared months ago. One of the women working at the brothel tells him that whoever she was, she left 6 months ago, and no one knows where she is now. As Cassian exits the brothel, 2 corrupt corporate security officers, known as Corpos, hassle him. Cassian tells them that he doesn't want any trouble and that he has 300 credits in his coat pocket that they can take. He puts his hands up and waits for the nearest guard to frisk him before unleashing a series of quick, brutal moves. Cassian ends up killing one of the Corpos by banging his head on the ground. The other begs for his life, but Cassian hesitantly shoots him too, not wanting any witnesses. Cassian then makes a hasty escape from the planet. Afterward, Cassian returns to his home planet, Ferrix, a free trade world in the Morlani system. Cassian's loyal droid, the red-plated B-2 EMO, heads out to the scrapyard and then back to Cassian's hideout, where he finds Cassian visibly distressed and scared. Cassian asks the droid whether anyone came the previous night asking for him. Desperate to cover his tracks, he asks B-2 EMO if it has enough charge left to lie for him. The droid assures him that it does. Cassian then instructs B-2 EMO to tell anyone who comes looking for him that he wasn't there. Next, Cassian visits his friend Brasso to craft his alibi further. He concocts an elaborate lie and asks Brasso to cover for him in case someone comes asking for him. Meanwhile, news of the Corpo Squad commander's death reaches Deputy Inspector Cyril Karn and his boss, Chief Hein. Hein wants to sweep it under the rug, telling Karn to forget about it and go about his business. The chief explains that he knew one of the men who was killed and describes him as one of the most unpleasant people he'd ever known. He adds that they were drinking in a brothel while on duty, which would have been grounds for suspension. Hein concludes that the Corpos must have interfered with the wrong man and died in a fight. He instructs Karn to write a report saying they died helping others, but not to make it too heroic. However, Cyril is determined to investigate, convinced it was murder and not an accident. As soon as Chief Hein leaves for a conference, Cyril starts the investigation. He traces a ship that left Morlana 1 on the night of the murders and discovers it went to Ferrix. He then puts out a bulletin asking for information on a Kenari male suspect on Ferrix. The episode then flashes back to Cassian's childhood on Kenari, where he lived with his sister in a remote tribe of children. They witness a ship crash land in the forest, and the tribe prepares to investigate, marking their faces and arms with black paint. Back in the present, Cassian visits Bix, an ex-lover, and asks her to connect him with a buyer she knows. He wants to acquire an untraceable starship to get off-world and lay low. Cassian tells Bix he has an invaluable part of an untraceable starship. Initially, Bix hesitates and asks how he got the part. However, after Cassian's repeated requests, she finally agrees and secretly contacts her anonymous buyer Luthen Rael about Cassian's valuable starship part. Later, some local criminals to whom Cassian owes money approach him, but he tells them they just have to wait a few more days, promising they'll get their money back soon. As Cassian continues his preparations to leave Ferrix, Deputy Inspector Cyril Karn's investigation intensifies. Karn's team searches for Kenari males on Ferrix, though they are apprehensive about obtaining such information. They tell Cyril that Ferrix is known for doing things their own way, but Cyril commands them to put out a bulletin anyway and set up a desk to receive any information about the suspect. In another flashback with the Kenari children, the episode ends with Cassian heading out with some other children to explore the crashed ship as his younger sister calls out for him. This concludes the first episode of Andor Season 1. The second episode of Andor Season 1 is titled, That Would Be Me. The episode opens with a flashback to the planet Kenari, where a group of young children, including a young Cassian Andor, known as Casa at the time, are making their way through the dense forest. They are headed towards the site of a crashed ship, likely an Imperial mining vessel, As the group approaches the crash site, they come across a massive crater in the ground, forcing them to go around it. They eventually reach the ship and discover that one of the crew members is still alive. The Kenari children engage the soldier, using their blowguns to attack him. The soldier shoots at them with his gun repeatedly. The children's leader, who approaches first, is immediately killed by the soldier. However, the Kenari are finally able to kill the soldier after firing many arrows from their blowguns. The scene then shifts to the present day on the planet Ferrix, where Cassian Andor is making his way through the streets at the start of the workday. The clanging of a metal chest echoes through the air, signaling the beginning of the daily routine for the manual laborers of the town. Bix's current love interest and co-worker Tim is suspicious and jealous of Cassian and thinks that Andor is trying to steal Bix away from him. Tim's suspicions are heightened when he notices a bulletin from the Premor Authority, the local law enforcement, searching for a Kenari male matching Cassian's description. Cassian returns home to his mother, Marva, who has also seen the bulletin and confronts him about it. Cassian admits that he has messed up and reveals that he was involved in an incident on Morlana 1, where he accidentally killed one security guard and intentionally killed another. Marva asks him in a raised voice about who else knows about his Kenari heritage. We also learn that Marva was the one who helped Cassian hide his Kenari heritage and forged the records to say that Cassian is from the planet Fest instead. Marva tells him to be careful as Cassian runs out of the house to go meet Bix. Cassian then meets with Bix, who has also seen the bulletin. Cassian says that he has no time and offers Bix to buy the invaluable starship part from him, and in exchange, just give him enough credit so he can get off the planet. Bix, however, informs him that she has already contacted the buyer, and he will be here the next day. Cassian puts his hand on Bix's hand and tells her that he won't forget this kindness that she's shown him. However, unbeknownst to them, Tim has been watching their conversation. He grows increasingly jealous and decides to anonymously report Cassian to the authorities. In response to Tim's tip, Deputy Inspector Cyril Karn and Sergeant Linus Mosk of the Premor Authority assemble a squad of 12 guards to apprehend Cassian on Ferrix. Karn, eager to prove himself, delivers a brief and somewhat awkward speech to the squad before they depart for the town. Meanwhile, Cassian seeks to secure passage off Ferrix. He goes to meet the transport operator, Zanwan, and asks him how much it'll cost him to take a trip to Tasser. He tells Zanwan that he has to leave today and that he wants the discretionary package. Zanwan initially says 900 credits, but Cassian laughs it off. Cassian says that he only has 500, to which Zanwan says that the lowest he'll go is 700. He tells Zanwan to ready the ship within the hour and quickly runs off to make further arrangements. Meanwhile, the mysterious buyer Luthen flies above Ferrix in a hover bus, observing the scrapyard where he is supposed to meet Cassian. A talkative passenger strikes up a conversation with Luthen, mentioning that he works in propulsion. However, when the passenger inquires about Luthen's job, Luthen remains silent, avoiding any details about the nature of his work. The episode then returns to the flashback on Kenari, where the young Cassian and his tribe members retrieve the body of their fallen leader and make their way back to their camp. It is also revealed to us by Shanwan that the planet Kenari has been abandoned and is considered toxic after a mining disaster. In the present time, Cassian prepares to meet with the mysterious buyer, unaware that the Premor Authority squad, led by Karn and Mosk, is already en route to Ferrix to apprehend him. As the episode concludes, Cassian is seen walking with determination, intent on escaping before the authorities catch up, while the buyer's hover bus flies overhead. This concludes the second episode of Andor Season 1. The third episode of Andor Season 1 is titled Reckoning. The episode begins with a flashback to Cassian Andor's childhood on the planet Kenari. A young Kassa boards a crashed Republic ship and starts destroying the interior in a fit of anger after discovering the dead bodies of his tribe, their skin covered in an odd golden yellow sheen. Marva, a local scavenger, and her companion Clem find Kassa and realize he doesn't speak Basic. when B2EMO informs them that another Republic ship is on the way. Marva decides to sedate Casa and take him with them, despite Clem's protests, believing she is saving his life. In the present, the mysterious buyer Luthen Rael arrives on the planet Ferrix to meet Cassian and purchase a valuable Imperial tracking device that Cassian has stolen. Luthen is greeted by Bix, who directs him to the meeting spot where Cassian is hiding. Meanwhile, Cyril Karn and his Pre-Mor Authority team also arrive on Ferrix, armed with a warrant for Cassian's arrest. While hiding, Cassian visits his friend Brasso at a construction site and tells him he has money coming and will repay what he owes. Cassian also asks Brasso to keep an eye on Marva. Meanwhile, Cyril Karn and his team raid Marva's home, tearing it apart and tossing Cassian's room in search of any clues about him. Cassian inadvertently reveals his position by contacting B2EMO, repeatedly asking the droid to come in and telling it to inform Marva that he's sorry for everything. The officers overhear this, allowing Cyril's men to trace and intercept the signal, quickly realizing Cassian is to their east. Leaving 2 men with Marva, the rest of the team rushes towards Cassian's location. The people of Ferrix, a proud and resolute community, resent how the soldiers are treating them. In protest, the locals shut their shops, and the workers start clanking metal in unison, creating an intimidating sound. In the meantime, a man informs Bix that the Pre-Mor officers are trashing Marva's place. She quickly realizes that someone has ratted out Cassian, as not many people know about his Kenari heritage. When Bix tries to run to help Cassian, Tim stops her, insisting that Andor can take care of himself, and she shouldn't go. Bix then realizes that her boyfriend Tim is the one who betrayed Cassian. As she runs out to warn Cassian, the authorities become suspicious of her behavior and detain her, causing her to bleed from her head during the encounter. Tim, who followed Bix, arrives at the scene and demands that they let her go. As he approaches the officers, one of them opens fire, killing Tim on the spot while a helpless Bix watches. Afterward, Luthen reaches the abandoned factory lot where Cassian is hiding. He asks Cassian to show him the tracking device that he's arrived to buy. Cassian unwraps the tracking device he intends to sell to him. Luthen tells Cassian that he'll give him 1,000 credits if he tells him how he got his hands on this device. Cassian tells him that he simply waltzed in there as if he belonged with them. He says he stole a uniform, dirtied his hands a little, and simply walked in. He further says that the Imperials are so full of corruption and pride that they wouldn't even notice if a commoner was walking through them. Luthen is so impressed by Cassian that he offers him the chance to join the growing rebellion against the Empire. As Cassian contemplates whether to accept Luthen's offer, they quickly realize they've been boxed in by the Pre-Mor authorities. As they attempt to flee, Cassian notices they've left the device behind and goes back to retrieve it. He narrowly avoids being crushed and shot, but ultimately has to retreat without the device. To create a distraction, Luthen detonates charges he had placed around the building. They escape the factory, killing almost all the officers that had surrounded them. As bodies start falling, the remaining officers grasp the gravity of the situation and decide to flank Cassian and Luthen, seeking hiding spots. Cyril Karn hides in a home but gets caught by Cassian and Luthen. Luthen then prompts Cassian to kill Karn, but Cassian chooses not to, and instead asks Karn how many men he brought. Using a decoy speeder as a distraction, Luthen and Cassian slip away on a speeder bike and safely arrive at Luthen's ship. The episode ends with a final flashback to Kenari, where Marva and Clem take the sedated Casa aboard their ship, separating him from his family and home planet, but saving him from inevitable doom and death. This concludes the 3rd episode of Andor Season 1. The 4th episode of Andor Season 1 is titled Aldhani. In the aftermath of the events on Ferrix, Cassian Andor escapes with Luthen Rael aboard Luthen's ship. As Cassian tends to his injured arm, Luthen informs him that they are headed to the planet Aldhani. Luthen offers Cassian a substantial sum of 200,000 credits to join his rebel organization and participate in a mission to inflict damage upon the Empire. Cassian initially refuses, saying he values his life too much to risk it for a rebellion. However, Luthen insists, claiming that he knows Cassian hates the Empire as much as he does. He offers Cassian a chance to strike a significant blow against the Empire. Eventually, Cassian agrees to help Luthen in his fight against the Empire. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, the capital of the galaxy, the Imperial Security Bureau holds a meeting to discuss the situation on Ferrix. Dedra Meero, a new ISB agent, takes over the case after discovering that the stolen Starpath unit was taken from an Imperial naval base under her supervision. At the same time, Cyril Karn, Sergeant Mosk, and Chief Hein are summoned to ISB headquarters. An ISB lieutenant reprimands them for the loss of 4 lives, including 3 officers. The lieutenant informs them that the Empire has decided to take control of the entire Morlana system as a result of the incident, and then dismisses them. Subsequently, Luthen and Cassian land on the planet Aldhani, where they are greeted by Vel, the leader of the team assigned to the dangerous mission. Vel is initially hesitant to accept Cassian into the group just days before the planned heist, arguing it's too late to include anyone new. Luthen persuades her by emphasizing Cassian's valuable skills as a mercenary. When Vel learns that Luthen is paying Cassian for the mission, she becomes angry. However, Luthen manages to calm her down, reminding her that they are short a man and Cassian can really help them out. Cassian assumes the alias Clem for the mission. Ultimately, Vel agrees, and she and Cassian begin the long journey back to the Rebels' camp. Meanwhile, Luthen leaves on his ship, heading back to Coruscant and disguising himself as he prepares to land. On Aldhani, Cassian joins the Rebel team, which includes Arvel Skeen, Taramin, and Cinta. They start preparing for a daring mission to rob the Imperial garrison on the planet, targeting the quarterly payroll for an entire Imperial sector. The team undergoes training and preparations for the mission, which is set to take place during a rare celestial event called the Eye of Aldhani. Cassian struggles with the idea of committing to the rebellion as he knows that it's a suicide mission, but Vel convinces him that he has no choice but to see it through. On Coruscant, Luthen resumes his public persona as a wealthy antique dealer named Rael Lemex. At his shop, he is visited by Senator Mon Mothma. While Luthen's assistant distracts the senator's driver, Luthen and Mon Mothma retreat to the back of the shop to discuss their secret work against the Empire. Mon Mothma expresses her anxiety about being under constant scrutiny and mentions that the enemy is closing in on her. She reveals that she is trying to recruit another member into their circle. Luthen is alarmed and strongly opposes the idea, arguing that they are already very vulnerable. Mon Mothma insists she understands their vulnerability and warns that if they are caught, she will be the first to fall. Later, Mon Mothma returns home to find her husband, Perrin, preparing the guest list for a dinner he is hosting in honor of a governor. The scene offers a glimpse into the strained relationship between Mon Mothma and Perrin, revealing their marriage to be more of a political arrangement than one of love and affection. Mon Mothma is visibly uncomfortable and on edge when she learns that her husband has invited Imperial figures she does not trust. Meanwhile, Dedra complains to Major Partagaz when Lieutenant Blevin refuses to hand over the raw data files from the Ferrix mission. Blevin asserts that Ferrix falls under his jurisdiction, but Dedra counters that the stolen Starpath unit came from her base, giving her jurisdiction as well. Major Partagaz intervenes, reminding Dedra that Blevin is her senior and oversees 7 zones, whereas she only has 2. He dismisses Dedra's complaint and sends Blevin away. As the episode concludes, Vel and her team are having dinner by a fire with Andor. Lieutenant Gorn, a member of the Rebel team, attempts to discuss the plan with Andor, but Andor tells him to let him keep eating. Vel stands up, confronts Andor, and tells him that she expects him to learn everything by morning. She then walks off to take the first watch through the night. This concludes the 4th episode of Andor Season 1. The 5th episode of Andor Season 1 is titled The Axe Forgets. The episode begins with Cyril Karn, the former pre-Mor security officer who had been pursuing Cassian Andor. Cyril is now back at his mother's home, where she chastises him for his failure and lack of future prospects. She mentions calling his uncle, Harlow, to see if he can give Cyril a chance, further emphasizing Cyril's fall from grace. The scene then shifts to the Aldhani moon, where Cassian Andor wakes up to find his belongings scattered about. He confronts Arvel Skeen, one of the members of the crew Cassian has joined for the upcoming heist. Arvel dismisses Cassian's concerns, saying the items were just junk anyway. Arvel's backstory unfolds as well, revealing that his tattoos signify his imprisonment at a place known as Crate's Head. These markings also hint at his connection to an enigmatic group or entity referred to as By the Hand. Cassian, in turn, provides a cover story about coming from a youth center called SIPO. It's clear there is still a lack of trust between Cassian and the rest of the crew. Later, Cassian speaks with another crew member, the young and ideologically driven Karis Nemik, who tries to engage Cassian in a lengthy discussion about the Empire and the Rebellion. Nemik passionately argues that the Empire takes everything, from basic technology to entire worlds, and that the Rebellion is necessary to fight against this oppression. Taramyn interrupts before Nemik can fully launch into his philosophical brain. The episode then focuses on the crew's preparations for the upcoming heist. They use wooden blocks to visualize the layout of their target, the Imperial garrison they plan to raid. Vel and Taramyn express uncertainty about how to properly calibrate the weight of the freighter they intend to use to escape the garrison. Cassian quickly realizes that the crew lacks the necessary expertise to pilot the ship, and he insists on taking charge of the piloting duties. This leads to a tense exchange, as the other crew members are reluctant to relinquish control. Vel eventually agrees to let Cassian handle the piloting, acknowledging his superior skills. During a practice session where the crew rehearses marching like Imperial soldiers, Cassian offers helpful feedback on where everyone should be positioned based on their dominant hand and weapon locations. The episode also introduces Lieutenant Gorn, an Imperial officer on Aldhani who is secretly one of Vel's rebels. While marching towards the Imperial base, Cassian asks Vel about what an Imperial lieutenant is doing being mixed up with the rebellion. Vel then reveals that Lieutenant Gorn refused a promotion because he fell in love with a local girl. The girl eventually left him, and the lieutenant started developing a hatred for the Imperial authority. Meanwhile, Arvel pulls a knife on Cassian while making the journey to the Imperial base, when they had sat down to take a break and drink water. Arvel cuts off the necklace around his neck that had been given to Cassian by Luthen and questions him about his Kyber crystal necklace and his true identity as Clem. In return, Cassian pulls out his Imperial-issued gun and aims it at Arvel, demanding to have his necklace returned. Before things escalate further, Vel tries to calm everyone down and uses her authority to tell everyone to move along quickly before they are spotted by the Imperial drones flying above them. However, Cassian confesses that he's being paid to work with the rebels. He cites the reason for his confession by saying that he's putting his life on the two and doesn't want to keep looking over his shoulder. When they ask Vel if she knew about this, Vel's head drops in disappointment, and she also confesses that she knew that Cassian was being paid to do this. She defends herself by saying that she had no choice because Luthen had told her to either take him along or the mission would be called off. Cassian, however, calls out Arvel's suspicion as an expression of pre-heist jitters and says that it's normal. As night falls, Vel urges Arvel to approach Cassian in an effort to repair their strained relationship. During their conversation, Arvel opens up to Cassian, revealing that he once had a brother who was killed by the Empire. He explains that an Imperial prefect not only took his brother's life, but also seized his lands, igniting Arvel's deep-seated anger and desire for revenge against the Empire. The episode concludes with the crew's preparations seemingly complete, setting the stage for the upcoming heist. Meanwhile, Luthen anxiously listens to a radio for any updates on the mission, worried not only about the success of the heist, but also the potential fallout if Cassian or Vel are captured and traced back to him. This concludes the 5th episode of Andor Season 1. The 6th episode of Andor Season 1 is titled The Eye. The episode begins with Cassian Andor and the rebel team on Aldhani, poised to execute their daring plan to steal a massive cache of Imperial credits from an outpost. They wait for the ideal moment to strike as the local Dani people gather to witness the natural phenomenon known as the Eye. The Imperials, led by Commandant J-Hold Bihaz, view the Dani with disdain, considering them easily manipulated and no real threat. The episode portrays the Imperials as complex, multifaceted characters rather than mere villains. J-Hold's condescension is evident, particularly in his efforts to ingratiate himself with the Colonel, a high-ranking engineer in the Imperial hierarchy who has traveled to Aldhani for an inspection and to witness the Eye, a spectacle he has heard much about. As the episode unfolds, Terriman's past is revealed. He was once a stormtrooper. Andor's expression changes upon learning this, and Skeen mentions how shocked Cinta was when she found out, especially since stormtroopers had killed her entire family. Despite this revelation, Terriman takes charge of coordinating the rebel team's disguises and infiltration of the Imperial base. Vel and Cinta sneak in separately, while Cassian, Terriman, Nemik, and Skeen pose as Imperial soldiers. Lieutenant Gorn assigns them to escort the Aldhani pilgrims, who have come to their sacred valley to celebrate the Eye. He then orders the rest of the Imperial troops under his command to leave and enjoy the event. Before departing, Gorn instructs Corporal Kimsey not to allow anyone to come up without his permission, as Andor and the others successfully make their way into the base by posing as an escort squad for Commandant J-Hold Behaz, Gorn's superior. Once inside, the team takes Commandant Behaz and his family hostage, forcing him to cooperate by threatening their lives. However, things take a turn when one of Behaz's subordinates, Colonel Soden Pedigar, pulls out a gun, points it at Nemik, and demands that they release Behaz's young son. Andor tries to defuse the situation, repeatedly insisting that no one has to die. The Colonel, however, remains unyielding. Before he can act, Cinta and Vel slide down a shaft, and Cinta quickly shoots the Colonel in the head, killing him instantly. Behaz then claims that the vault containing the 80 million credits can only be accessed remotely from the air traffic control center, but Vel sees through his lie. She firmly tells him they already know how the vault works and demands his cooperation, threatening his family's lives if he refuses. She reassures Behaz that, unlike the Imperials, she'll let them all go if he cooperates. Subsequently, the team rushes to the hangar, leaving Cinta behind to watch the hostages. An emotional Vel says goodbye to Cinta, who reassures her that she'll be fine. The team successfully gains access to the vault, but as Nemik tries to communicate with Vel, Corporal Kimsey intercepts their transmission. Unaware that their comms are compromised, the rebels continue with the mission. Kimsey alerts the other Imperials, who quickly begin heading to the vault. Lieutenant Gorn, concerned about the mission's slow progress, also heads to the vault, revealing his true allegiance to the Commandant. Behaz, furious, scowls at Gorn and tells him they'll hang him for this, to which Gorn replies, "7 years working under you? I deserve worse." Chaos ensues as the base descends into madness and the rebels scramble to escape. When Corporal Kimsey and his troops arrive at the vault, Lieutenant Gorn tries to assert his authority, questioning Kimsey's presence and claiming that this is a classified mission. He orders Kimsey to leave, but Kimsey notices that the Commandant is visibly distressed, clutching his heart. Sensing that something is amiss, Kimsey opens fire on the rebels, sparking a fierce firefight between the two sides. In the chaos, both Lieutenant Gorn and Terriman are killed, while Cassian, Vel, Nemik, and Skeen barely manage to reach their getaway ship. During the escape, a massive crate of stolen credits crushes Nemik's legs, leaving him severely injured. Despite the injuries, they manage to escape, narrowly avoiding the TIE fighters deployed to stop them. While Vel believes they shouldn't jeopardize the mission, Cassian and Skeen insist on flying Nemik to a doctor. Once they arrive, Skeen reveals his true intentions, proposing that he and Cassian split the 80 million credits and abandon the rest of the team. He admits that the story about his brother was a lie, and that he was only in it for the money. Unwilling to betray his comrades, Cassian shoots and kills Skeen. Afterward, Cassian enters the doctor's room with his gun drawn on Vel, only to learn that Nemik has tragically succumbed to his injuries. Vel gives Cassian Nemik's manifesto, explaining that Nemik insisted he have it before he died. Cassian then tells Vel that he's taking the credits he was promised and leaving. As Cassian departs, news of the successful heist reaches Coruscant, where Luthen is thrilled. Meanwhile, the Imperials call an urgent council meeting as they prepare to retaliate harshly. This concludes the 6th episode of Andor Season 1. The 7th episode of Andor Season 1 is titled Announcement. The episode begins with Syril Karn preparing for a job interview arranged by his influential uncle, Harlow. Still fixated on the Aldhani heist and Cassian Andor's disappearance, Syril tells his recruiter that he's determined to catch the murderer of the 2 corpos and clear his name. Despite his ambitions, Syril is assigned to a dull, menial job related to fuel, leaving him frustrated. Meanwhile, Dedra Meero of the Imperial Security Bureau selects her uniform for an important meeting, highlighting the Empire's rigid formality. During the ISB meeting, Admiral Yularen announces the Empire's severe response to the Aldhani heist. He reveals a new directive that permanently revokes Imperial tolerance and imposes harsher penalties for any perceived anti-Imperial actions. Despite this, Dedra Meero remains unimpressed, suspecting that this heavy-handed reaction is precisely what the rebellion wanted. However, she is granted expanded jurisdiction to investigate thefts of Imperial equipment. On Coruscant, Senator Mon Mothma visits Luthen's shop and confronts him about his role in the Aldhani heist. Luthen admits that he orchestrated the plan, explaining that it was necessary to fund the rebellion, even if it meant casualties, as they needed to secure as many credits as possible. Mon Mothma is disturbed by the violent methods used. Later, Mon Mothma returns home, where she and her husband, Perrin, are hosting a party. At the event, she meets her old friend Tay Kolma, a banker. She confides in him that she is constantly being watched, and that her opposition to the Empire's overreach has made her a target, seen as troublesome or an irritation. Without revealing the full details, she asks Tay to help move money for her, since she no longer has unrestricted access to her family's wealth. She also emphasizes that Perrin is unaware of this and asks Tay to keep it a secret. Meanwhile, on Ferrix, Cassian returns to check on Marva. He informs her that he has secured enough money for them to escape the planet and flee from the Empire's reach. However, Marva refuses to leave. Despite Cassian's strong desire to protect her, Marva is determined to stay and fight against the Empire's occupation of Ferrix. She explains that the Aldhani heist has inspired others to resist, and she now feels empowered to take action herself. Marva poignantly tells Cassian, "You can't stay, and I can't go." In a bittersweet moment, Cassian says goodbye to Marva and Bee, promising her that he will return. Before leaving, Cassian says goodbye to Bix. He asks her for the name of the buyer, referring to Luthen, but Bix insists she doesn't know his identity. Cassian then instructs her to let Luthen know that he has fulfilled his part of their deal, and that Luthen should now forget about him. Meanwhile, on the planet Niamos, Vel and Clea, Luthen's assistant, discuss the Aldhani mission. Clea orders Vel to kill Cassian, fearing that he might betray the rebellion. But Vel remains conflicted about carrying out the order. The episode also highlights the far-reaching consequences of the Aldhani heist. The Empire is cracking down hard, revoking freedoms and imposing harsh punishments in response to the humiliating theft. At an ISB meeting, where senior-ranking officials are present, Major Partagaz announces that the Emperor has given the ISB more authority than ever before, and basically, they can do so as they want now. At the meeting, Blevin, in an attempt to undermine and humiliate Dedra Meero, announces that Dedra has committed executive overreach by obtaining files on the Ferrix incident without even filing for a request. Dedra retaliates by saying that she just used the new act that had been enforced to her advantage. She says that she now has hard, undeniable proof that very expensive parts of naval ships and starships have been stolen for quite some time. Major Partagaz praises her work and hands over Ferrix's sector command to Dedra. She is empowered to aggressively investigate rebel activity as the ISB tightens its grip. The ISB's harsh new policies and Dedra's expanded authority all demonstrate the Empire's tightening control in response to the Aldhani heist. The rebellion seems to be growing, but so is the Empire's relentless pursuit. Meanwhile, Cassian travels to a tropical planet where he wakes up next to a girl. As he steps out to do some shopping, he is stopped by a shore trooper patrol. Despite repeatedly insisting that he's just a tourist and has done nothing wrong, he is unjustly detained and sentenced to 6 years in an Imperial prison. This concludes the 7th episode of Andor Season 1. The 8th episode of Andor Season 1 is titled Narkina 5. The episode opens with Cassian Andor being transported to a remote prison facility on the planet Narkina 5 after being arrested for his involvement in the heist on Aldhani. Despite his protests that he is just a tourist, Cassian is sentenced to 6 years of hard labor for his crimes against the Empire. Meanwhile, on the galactic capital of Coruscant, the ISB officer Dedra Meero is determined to track down the mysterious Axis figure behind the recent rebel activities. She tracks down Cyril Karn, who supposedly has a personal vendetta against Cassian, as he wants to catch him and clear his name in the process. Dedra tells Karn to help her fill the gaps in the story. Cyril tells her that he hasn't even read the report of the Ferrix incident and that he was forced to sign the report without even reading it. It is also revealed that Karn has been filing false reports in an attempt to locate Cassian. Dedra gives him the report to read and asks him how to locate Cassian. Karn isn't much help, but he says that he was a good inspector, as he was able to solve the crime and locate Cassian within 2 days. Karn tries to convince Dedra that he would be a valuable asset in tracking down Cassian if she lets him join her team. However, Dedra remains unimpressed and dismisses his offer, though she does take note of his persistence. As Cassian arrives at the Narkina 5 prison, he is processed and assigned to a work detail, where he is forced to participate in a highly controlled and oppressive system of labor. The prisoners are divided into teams and pitted against each other, with productivity and evaluation being constant evaluation concerns. Cassian observes the harsh conditions and brutal treatment of the inmates, including the swift punishment of inmates in case their productivity levels go down. Afterward, Cassian notices 2 prisoners from different work teams communicating with each other across the vast facility using a complex system of hand signals, hinting at the possibility of resistance and escape. On Coruscant, Dedra Meero continues her investigation into the rebel activities. Dedra presents her findings in a meeting with her superiors, in which Colonel Yularen is also present. She tells them that there was a man alongside Cassian on Ferrix that day. She presents evidence of coordinated attacks and the involvement of the man who was with Cassian, whom she dubs Axis. Although Yularen appears unimpressed and dismissive of her concerns, Dedra remains determined to uncover the truth and dismantle the growing rebel network. Meanwhile, on Ferrix, Marva's health keeps declining rapidly as she grows increasingly ill and despondent. Bix, who's worried by this and scared by the fact that Marva might not live long, decides to reach out to Luthen in an attempt to locate Cassian, unaware that he is already in Imperial custody. Luthen's assistant, Clea, remains cautious of the fact that it might be the ISB on the other side. She convinces Luthen not to respond to Bix, fearing that it may compromise their own position and the larger rebel cause. Elsewhere, Luthen travels to the remote system of Segra Milo to meet with the extremist rebel leader Saw Gerrera, played by Forrest Whitaker, reprising his role from Rogue One. Luthen tries to convince Gerrera to work with other rebel factions, but Gerrera remains steadfast in his belief that he is the only one with a clear vision for the fight against the Empire. Luthen offers Gerrera a significant set of parts, but only if he agrees to work with another rebel group led by Anto Krieger to attack an Imperial station. Gerrera is reluctant, but Luthen insists that they cannot win this fight alone and must work together. The episode then returns to the Narkina 5 prison, where Cassian has settled into his new routine, with the passage of time marked by the changing of shifts rather than days. He continues to observe the harsh realities of the prison system, including the constant threat of punishment and the way the inmates are pitted against each other in a never-ending cycle of competition and productivity. Meanwhile, on Ferrix, as Bix returns from her attempt to contact Luthen, she discovers that one of her associates has been captured by the ISB. Soon after, Bix is spotted and starts to run. A stormtrooper shouts, "Get her!" and the troopers chase after her, eventually capturing and detaining her. She is taken to the local Imperial base, where Dedra Meero is waiting. Dedra leads Bix into an interrogation room, revealing her associate, who has just been tortured. Pointing to the same chair, Dedra makes it clear that she intends to use any means necessary to extract information from Bix about Cassian's whereabouts and the Rebel network. This concludes the 8th episode of Andor Season 1. The 9th episode of Andor Season 1 is titled Nobody's Listening. The episode begins on the prison planet of Narkina 5. Cassian Andor remains incarcerated, determined to find a way to escape. He tries to convince the prison foreman, Kino Loy, to help orchestrate an escape plan, but Kino is focused solely on completing his remaining 217 shifts and securing his release. Cassian argues that the Empire views them as expendable, cheaper than droids, and easier to replace, but Kino refuses to jeopardize his chance at freedom. Meanwhile, Bix Caleen is being interrogated by the ruthless Dedra Meero on Ferrix. Dedra introduces her to Dr. Gorst, a doctor who specializes in torture techniques and extracting information from prisoners. Dedra tells Bix that she doesn't have to go through all of this, and if she can just tell him whatever she knows about Cassian and Axis, she'll let her go. On Bix's refusal, Dr. Gorst employs a combination of psychological manipulation and physical torture to extract information about Cassian's whereabouts and his involvement with the recent rebel attack on Aldhani. Bix, weakened and in pain, eventually reveals to Dedra that Cassian had recently returned to Ferrix, clean-shaven and flush with credits, matching the description of the rebels who carried out the Aldhani heist. Dedra then informs the local Imperial commander on Ferrix to treat Bix as a witness rather than a hostage, and gives him permission to publicly execute Pak, Bix's known associate, as a warning to the citizens. This brutal display of the Empire's power is intended to strike fear into the hearts of the rebels and, by extension, the general public as well. On Coruscant, Senator Mon Mothma attempts to sway the Imperial Senate to oppose the Emperor's Public Order Resentencing Directive, the harsh new security measure that has been enacted by the Empire in the wake of the Aldhani heist. However, her impassioned pleas fall on deaf ears as her fellow senators choose to ignore the Empire's overreach, more concerned with protecting their own interests than defending the freedoms of the people they represent. Defeated, Mon Mothma returns to her car, where her driver tells her that her cousin has arrived. It is revealed that the senator's cousin is none other than Vel herself. Vel and Mon Mothma have a tense discussion about the rebellion's use of violent tactics against the Empire. Vel defends these actions as necessary to combat the Empire's darkness. However, Mon Mothma expresses doubts about the rebel effort and asks Vel to act like a spoiled rich girl for a while before she leaves. Meanwhile, Mon Mothma's efforts to secure funds for the rebellion hit a roadblock when her banker friend, Tay Kolma, informs her that they'll need to enlist the help of Davo Skulden, a well-known thug and shady businessman. At the ISB headquarters, Dedra Meero delivers a report connecting Cassian Andor to the Aldhani heist, further strengthening the Empire's case against him. A report comes in that they've caught a rebel pilot. During interrogation, the pilot reveals that Anton Krieger and his rebel forces are planning to attack another Imperial base soon. Dedra and Major Partagaz decide to devise a plan to set a trap for the rebel leader Anton Krieger, whom Luthen had been trying to recruit by using the pilot as bait. The next morning, outside the ISB building, Dedra encounters the former security officer Cyril Karn, who has become obsessed with her and her work. Cyril professes his admiration for Dedra's ruthless methods, but she firmly rejects his advances and threatens to have him arrested if he continues to stalk her. In Narkina 5, tensions are rising as the prisoners, led by Cassian, begin to suspect that something is amiss on the lower levels. A rumor comes in that the prison guards have killed all the prisoners on level 2, which startles Cassian and his fellow inmates. Melshi, another prisoner, ominously remarks that the Empire could keep them in prison forever after this, and no one would even know. This statement sets off Kino Loy, who is clinging to the promise of his freedom and sees any disruption as a threat to his plans. Meanwhile, an old inmate, Olaf, who is on Cassian's station, suffers a stroke. Cassian and the others quickly call for a medic. The doctor tells them that Olaf has suffered a stroke, and he doesn't have long remaining. He gives him an injection, which enables Olaf to have a peaceful death. As the doctor is treating Olaf, Cassian continuously probes the medic to tell him about what happened on level 2. The doctor eventually gives in to Cassian's relentlessness and tells Cassian and Kino that they massacred everyone on level 2, and they'll probably never let anyone out of the prison. Throughout the episode, Cassian repeatedly asks Kino how many guards are on each level, but Kino consistently refuses to answer. Despite this, the question weighs heavily on Kino. As they head back to their workroom, Cassian asks him once more. This time, Kino finally responds, "Never more than 12. This concludes the 9th episode of Andor Season 1. The 10th episode of Andor Season 1 is titled, One Way Out. The episode begins with Cassian Andor and the prisoners of Unit 52D on Narkina 5 finalizing their plans for a mass escape. Cassian is determined to act immediately, as a new prisoner is set to arrive the next day, which may be their last chance to escape. The following day, as the new prisoner is being escorted in by guards, Cassian seizes the moment to slip away and begins striking a water pipe repeatedly. After a tense struggle, the pipe finally gives way, and water starts gushing out. The water floods the floor, disabling the electrified surfaces that have been the prisoner's primary obstacle. If anyone attempted an escape, the guards could simply press a button and fry them. With the electrified floors now neutralized, the prisoners, led by the initially reluctant Kino Loy, quickly overpower the guards and make their way toward the exit. Cassian and Kino reach level 8, where the central control room is located. They force the guards there to disable the facility's electricity and open all the doors. Finally, Kino Loy, encouraged by Cassian, takes charge and rallies the prisoners. He addresses them over the facility's PA system, delivering an inspiring speech that motivates them to unite and break free. In a powerful and emotional speech, Loy tells the prisoners that they'll have no hope of escape anymore, that they're all being imprisoned for life unless they escape right here and now. He urges them to run, to climb, to kill, and to help each other. The prisoners respond with a chant of "One Way Out" as they make their desperate bid for freedom. As the prisoners jump into the ocean below to complete their escape, Kino Loy realizes that he cannot swim and will be unable to join them. He watches helplessly as the other prisoners, including Cassian and another prisoner named Melshi, make it out of the facility and jump into the waters below. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, Mon Mothma meets with the shady banker Davo Skuldun in her home, with Tay Kolma also present. Davo offers to assist her in obtaining the funds she needs for her charitable activities, but his help comes with a steep price. He proposes an arranged marriage between Mon Mothma's daughter and his son. Mon Mothma is appalled by the suggestion and immediately rejects the offer, demanding that Davo leave her home. Despite her firm refusal, Davo ominously tells her, "That's where you're wrong." This scene underscores the difficult choices and personal sacrifices Mon Mothma faces as she navigates the complexities of supporting the growing rebellion. Elsewhere, Luthen and Kleya receive a coded message indicating that their mole within the ISB wants a face-to-face meeting with Luthen. Kleya warns that it could be a trap, especially since they haven't heard from the contact in months. Despite her concerns, Luthen argues that if it were a trap, they would already be compromised, and he decides to take the risk. Luthen proceeds to meet the mole, who is revealed to be Lonnie Jung. Lonnie expresses a desire to leave this dangerous double life behind and protect his family. Now a father, he admits that the fear he feels is something entirely new to him. Luthen refuses to let Lonnie go, reminding him of the sacrifices required to defeat the Empire. Angrily, Lonnie demands to know what Luthen has sacrificed thus far. In a chilling monologue, Luthen lays down the depth of his own personal sacrifices and the ruthlessness he is willing to show in service of the rebellion. Luthen's words to Lonnie reveal the immense personal toll that the fight against the Empire has taken on him. He confesses that he has already sacrificed his love, hope, kinship, morals, and decency in pursuit of his goals. Luthen also acknowledges the fact that he has now become the villain, using the Empire's own playbook against them, burning away everything inside him for dreams he shares with ghosts. The episode ends with a breathtaking shot of the escaped prisoners swimming through the ocean, fanning out in all directions, their freedom finally within reach. However, the cost of this escape, both in terms of lives lost and the personal sacrifices made, is made painfully clear. This concludes the 10th episode of Andor Season 1. The 11th episode of Andor Season 1 is titled Daughter of Ferrix. The episode begins with Cassian Andor and his inmate friend Melshi clinging to a cliffside on the planet Narkina 5, having just escaped from the Empire's brutal prison. They are disheveled and exhausted, their feet injured from their harrowing escape. As they evade Imperial patrols, Cassian tries to reassure Melshi, who is on the verge of losing his grip. Cassian urges him to hold on and keep fighting for his life. Their immediate goal is to find a way off the planet, but the surrounding waters make their escape even more challenging. As they make their way through the terrain, they encounter some Narkinians, the planet's native inhabitants. Initially, the Narkinians consider turning Cassian and Melshi in for the Empire's bounty. However, they quickly change their minds upon realizing that the Empire's presence has devastated their planet's resources, particularly the water supply. This moment highlights the broader impact of the Empire's tyranny, as the locals decide to help the fugitives instead. They ask Cassian where they want to go, and Cassian tells them that he wants to go to Nyamos, where Cassian's money is hidden. Meanwhile, on Ferrix, a somber event unfolds. Marva Andor, Cassian's adoptive mother, passes away, succumbing to her illness exacerbated by the tyranny of the Empire and being away from Cassian for so long with no contact. Marva and Cassian's droid B2 EMO, who has been a loyal companion to Marva, is particularly affected by her passing. He expresses his grief, stating, "I don't want to be alone. I want Marva," which underscores the emotional weight of her death. Brasso, Cassian's close friend, shows compassion by staying with B for the night after giving in to B's sad eyes. On Coruscant, Mon Mothma is facing her own set of challenges. When Vel visits, the senator confides that she's in serious trouble. Mon Mothma explains how she used to easily access her family fortune, regularly withdrawing 100,000 credits each month without issue. However, this activity eventually drew the attention of the Imperial authorities, who began investigating Chandrilan accounts. Now, she's suddenly missing 400,000 credits from one of her ledgers. Mon Mothma reveals that she has a solution, but it involves marrying her daughter Leida to the son of the shady banker Davos Skuldoon. Vel becomes increasingly disturbed as she hears this plan. Simultaneously, Luthen is in a tense meeting with Saw Gerrera. Saw informs Luthen that he's ready to collaborate with Kriegir and launch an attack on the Imperial base. However, Luthen warns Saw that the attack is doomed, as the ISB has intercepted Kriegir's plans, and the entire team is likely to be killed. Luthen argues that allowing Kriegir's team to go ahead with the mission, despite the inevitable loss, could make the Empire overconfident, causing them to lower their guard and potentially provide the rebellion with a strategic advantage later on. Saw is torn between warning Kriegir and saving the lives of 30 men or letting them sacrifice themselves for the greater good. Ultimately, Saw makes the difficult decision to remain silent, much to the delight of Luthen. The episode also features a thrilling space battle, a hallmark of the Star Wars franchise. While navigating his ship, Luthen encounters an Imperial vessel. The Imperial captain orders Luthen to disable his stabilizers and prepare for boarding and inspection. However, Luthen has other plans. Showcasing his exceptional piloting skills, Luthen evades the tractor beams and engages in a dogfight reminiscent of classic Star Wars battles. His resourcefulness and cunning are on full display as he expertly outmaneuvers the Imperial forces. In an impressive sequence, Luthen blasts the Imperial ship's tracker and takes down the attacking droids. He manages to escape unharmed as the distraught Imperial captain looks on. Meanwhile, Cassian and Melshi successfully board a Narkinian ship and head to Niamos. Once there, Cassian retrieves his hidden safe, containing all his credits and a radio. He uses the radio to contact Ferrix and connects with Zan, asking him to relay a message to Marva, that he misses her, is thinking of her, and that she'd be proud of him now. However, in a somber turn, Zan informs Cassian that Marva has passed away, leaving him stunned and at a loss for words. As Cassian steps outside, Melshi asks if he's okay, and Cassian, still reeling from the news, lies, saying that everything is fine. Melshi then raises a sobering thought. What if they were the only two who made it out alive? He insists that they have a responsibility to tell the world about what's happening in the Narkina 5 prison, and suggests they have a better chance if they split up. With a heavy heart, Cassian hands Melshi his gun and bids him farewell, uncertain of what to do next. This concludes the 11th episode of Andor Season 1. The 12th episode and final episode of Andor Season 1 is titled Rick's Road. The episode begins with Cassian Andor, having recently escaped from an Imperial prison, grappling with the news of his mother, Marva's death. A significant gathering of the Imperial troops occurs on Ferrix, where her funeral will take place. The Empire, under the command of Supervisor Dedra Meero, sees this as an opportunity to capture Cassian, who they believe will return to honor his mother. As the episode progresses, we witness the tense atmosphere in Ferrix, which is under heavy Imperial surveillance. The Empire has established a curfew, and the townspeople are living in fear, knowing that any sign of dissent could lead to severe repercussions. Dedra Meero, determined to capture Cassian, has her agents on high alert, anticipating his return to the planet. Luthen and Vel also arrive on Ferrix to join Cinta, who's already been here for weeks keeping an eye on the situation for the rebellion. They have their plans to eliminate Cassian to prevent him from revealing critical information about the rebellion. On the day of the funeral, the atmosphere is sad but tense. The community gathers on Rick's Road to honor Marva, and her funeral suddenly becomes a very important point of contention. As the funeral begins, Marva's presence is felt strongly, and her impact on the lives of those around her is as visible as daylight. As the ceremony progresses, Ferrix's anvil begins to ring, which catches the Imperial forces off guard as they are not ready for the funeral yet. B projects a hologram of Marva up into the sky, and Marva starts delivering her speech. Marva's speech resonates deeply with the gathered crowd. Although she is not physically present, her words, delivered through the holographic message, inspire the townspeople. In her moving speech, she addresses the oppression of the Empire and encourages the people of Ferrix to resist. This moment becomes pivotal, igniting a spark of rebellion among the citizens. The emotional weight of her message transcends her death, galvanizing the community to stand against their oppressors. Simultaneously, the Imperial forces, led by Dedra, are preparing to act. They have set up a perimeter around the funeral, ready to apprehend Cassian should he appear. The tension escalates as the crowd begins to respond to Marva's call to action, leading to a confrontation between the townspeople and the Imperial troops. The atmosphere shifts from somber mourning to a charged atmosphere of defiance as the citizens of Ferrix rally together. As the situation intensifies, the first act of rebellion occurs. Salman Pak's young boy, whose father was killed mercilessly and brutally by the ISB, throws a bomb at the Imperial forces, triggering chaos. The crowd erupts into a full-scale uprising, fighting back against the oppressive regime. The Imperial troops respond with violence, leading to a brutal clash between the rebels and the Empire. As the townspeople fight for their freedom and the memory of Marva, the Imperial troops open fire at them, causing a high number of casualties. Meanwhile, Cassian arrives at Ferrix and heads straight to the old workshop, where he finds an old friend. He urgently asks about Bix and learns that she has been captured by the ISB and subjected to brutal physical and mental torture. Determined to save her, Cassian resolves to break Bix out of the Imperial facility, even if it means taking on the entire garrison by himself. With the help of Brasso and others, Cassian hides in a room until the troops finish their sweep. He then makes his way through the sewers toward the ISB building. Amidst the chaos outside, Cassian seizes the opportunity to break into the facility and rescue Bix. They blend into the crowd and make their way to a starship ready for escape. Brasso, B, and Salman Pak's son are already on board, preparing to flee. A visibly weakened Bix, supported by Cassian, arrives at the ship. However, Cassian tells them he has unfinished business and won't be joining them. After helping Bix onto the ship, he says his goodbyes to B, assuring both B and Bix that he'll find them again, just as he always does, before parting ways once more. Cassian makes his way onto Luthen's starship, who is surprised to see him make such a bold move. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Cassian presents Luthen with a choice: either kill him or take him in. This moment highlights the complex relationship between the two, as Cassian seeks to understand his role in the rebellion and Luthen's true intentions. Luthen's smirk in response indicates a deeper understanding of their shared goals, suggesting a potential for future collaboration between them. The episode concludes with Cassian making a pivotal decision. He leaves Bix and his droid B behind, promising to return to them, and chooses to align himself with Luthen. This decision marks a turning point for Cassian, as he fully commits to his role in the rebellion and the fight against the Empire. In a post-credits scene, a startling revelation unfolds. The droid parts that Cassian and his fellow inmates were being forced to assemble in prison are actually components of the Death Star, the gargantuan space station armed with a planet-destroying super laser first introduced in Star Wars. Episode 4, A New Hope. This concludes the season finale of Andor Season 1.